you need to have a proven edge to make money in the markets. You can be profitable with a 10% win rate and you can be profitable with a 90% win rate. It's normal to have a red month every now and then. Basically, 76% of weeks should be green. I hear too many times that it's all about the mental side. Mental side doesn't matter if you don't have an edge.
Hello, and welcome to the Trader's Journey for Investors Underground. In this episode, I get to speak with a hybrid trader who combines systematic with discretionary trading. He's known online as Jeppez 420, and he's managed to turn $12,000 into over $1 million in net profits in just 16 months. But behind that impressive number is a story of hard work, resilience, and evolution. In this episode, we'll meet the person behind the screen name and learn how he went from chasing random setups to constantly executing high probability setups that are tailored to his unique strengths. It's my honor to introduce Jeppez 420. Hello, Jeppez. Thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
So, Jeppez, I'd like to start by just asking, how did you first get involved with the stock market and the world of trading?
I think I've had a longer kind of some interest to that. So I was doing some investments and following the markets from maybe already like 2010 or so. And over time, it also evolved into something that could help me to kind of reach financial independence. And retire early. And then when we got the COVID markets, and especially the in 2021, we had a GameStop running in the early part of the year. I think that was kind of the final spark that I needed to really start to look into this and how could I start to evolve in day trading and so forth. And basically, then a bit after that, so in 2021, May, I started day trading seriously.
What do you remember about some of those early trades that you took? Were they successful? Were they frustrating? What do you remember about that time period?
To start with the GameStop, probably it was something that cost later on for me, but basically I nailed that long, had pretty much my whole account in it, but at the same time I didn't really realize much profits, so gave most back, but it gave kind of the view that what's possible, and then when I really started day trading, the markets were quite crazy then, so I was longing intraday moves, and basically you could pretty much do that with your eyes closed and probably hit some big runners. That was all I knew then, so I didn't understand that basically that was the markets, not me. And so I had a few wins there to start kind of the day trading journey, but at the same time, during the first year of day trading in 2021, basically I had all of the months were red, so not enough consistency there or edge.
Do you remember sort of the criteria that you were using at that time period to enter into trades?
Yeah, it was basically a few sources that I used. I was studying, like, for example, Tim Critani and a few others. So I was looking at daily breakouts and then started to learn patterns like ABCD pattern, where you have a morning push, then start to have higher lows, building up towards the afternoon, and so forth. So those kinds of, but they were discretionary setups, so it's completely different than what I have now based my career on.
When did you start to notice and find consistency in your trading? Do you remember that time period and that moment, and sort of the light bulb moment that you had when you realized that you might have found a little bit of success that was repeatable?
Yeah, I think that basically, if I go a bit back, so 2021, I day traded and all the months were red. It was just slow bleeding. I had decent risk management, so I was just losing slowly. Then I traded the following year, 22, swing trading, and that was a market where pretty much all swing traders were red, or at least most I know. And by the end of 22, I realized that I want to be able to trade in a way that's not dependent on the market conditions. So I don't want my trading style to be such that I require a bull market to make money. I want to be able to make money in all conditions. So when I then found my way into system trading, that really clicked, and then I started to find consistency and kind of through data, I knew that what I need to do in order to be profitable. So that's kind of in 23, the full whole year was full of light bulb moments. Many things I learned then, and also remember many times when I really kind of saw the light at the end of the tunnel.
If you're looking for ways to take your trading to the next level, Investors Underground might be able to help. You'll have access to courses and mentors to learn from, some of the best technology available for scanning stocks and breaking news, and access to the chat rooms, where you'll find a vibrant community of focused traders who share their trade ideas in real time each day. Members have access to the morning broadcasts where the IU moderators share their trade ideas for the day ahead. Members have access to the midday study sessions with Stan, the midweek study sessions with Sam, webinars, moderator watch lists, and all the other resources that Investors Underground has to offer. Listeners of The Trader's Journey can access exclusive membership deals available at investorsunderground.com/journey. And now, back to our episode with Jeppez. So I wanted to talk a little bit about you finding systems trading and how that evolved your trading style. So can you talk a little bit about, your foray into systems trading, how you learned about it, and how that eventually started to inform the style that you began to trade?
Yeah, so at the end of 22, when I was kind of finding my way into something where I could consistently make money regardless of the market conditions, I stumbled across Chris Verma, who is a system trader and also teaches system trading to others. So I joined his room and studied his materials and setups, and that's really kind of gave the foundation of how you can become a system trader. And then it took some time to nail down the kind of risk management, position sizing, and also these days, for example, I'm not trading any of the setups that come with his service. So basically, I learned his setups. I learned how to do backtesting and develop setups, and then developed my own setups. Some of those developed myself, and some with other traders.
What was the first sort of trading system that you began to build for yourself, where, you had created this foundation, and then, obviously you're having your own thoughts about how you can tailor that to yourself? What were some of the ideas early on that you were starting to test that helped you start to build your own system? Do you remember some of that?
Yeah, I think the first ones were pretty much just modifications of the setups from Verma. So let's say one setup he's shared is kind of a parabolic move intraday. So a certain percentage move in the last 30 minutes, and then you add on the top of that whatever filters you see fit, whether they are more fundamental or then just related to, I don't know, volume or the extension from open, or whichever those would be. But I think what really helped me is I did two things that were probably the most important ones. First one was to add enough of kind of handicap to the backtesting. So you always have slippage, you have locate costs, and what have you. Every now and then you might get some really big slippage if something holds against you, and then you are able to cover only when it opens up higher. So I started using 5% per trade. So basically, when I'm doing backtesting, let's say I'm backtesting something where I'm putting a 10,000 position size. In the backtesting, basically the trade starts with being 500 down. So that's the kind of really meaningful handicap there. So if I see a profitability even with that and a decent profitability, I can be quite certain that there is something to be gained there. And the other one was to really limit the number of criteria for the setup to avoid overfitting. So I'd rather have a little bit lower expectancy per trade, but then have much more trades to ensure that I'm not overfitting based on the historical data. So really minimizing the number of criteria I'm using for the setups.
When you're creating a system, what type of criteria are you looking for? What type of variables and data are you sort of thinking about that you'd like to test later on? I'm asking on behalf of the people listening that might want to start thinking about moving into the path of a systems type of trade. So, what are you looking for in terms of data and variables?
Yeah, I would say the list that what you can check is pretty much infinite. So it helps that if you have traded for a longer time, so maybe you have an idea how certain patterns work or what kinds of moves usually end up fading and so forth. So it's almost all of that is based on either price action or volume. So daily volume, how much the stock has moved in the recent days, where is the trigger coming versus today's open, pre-market highs, what have you. So it's a endless list of things, but then you need to kind of prioritize and think that what could make sense. In a way, I always want to have some kind of a reasoning for a filter or a criteria in a setup, so it needs to make sense for me. I'm not really a fan of. I would never be doing kind of a black box optimization, so just getting some random variables that seem to have a correlation. I want there to be some meaning to it, so it makes sense to me why something actually works for a setup.
The data that you're using, is this all data that you are recording and collecting yourself, or are you also using sort of third-party data to track what you need to create a system and do back testing?
Yeah, so if I'm developing a new setup, I'll either do it like mainly my back testing is done in Excel, so I'll then get the data from these days either from Spikeit, or if that's not sufficient, then I have a few buddies who can get me data from Polygon.io, which requires then Python coding to do, and then I do the backtesting in Excel. But that's a bit slower way of doing it. So there are a few services I might use. So for example, if I have anything related to Jeppez, I might use Flash Research or something similar.
For your system, is there a particular trade or set of trades that you think really illustrate the system that you use to trade?
Still last year, so in 23, I basically in X, I shared every day all of my trades, all of my charts. So I've actually also found quite many traders to go through that and start to understand kind of what kind of setups there could be. I'd say it's probably the three main categories. It's either something related to Jeppez, or then it's hitting a front side on a parabolic move, or then what I find the most difficult to quantify as a system setup would be some kind of a backside setup. So there are so many ways to try to quantify that when is for example, intraday parabolic move, when is it over and we actually have a backside and maybe now we are due for a fade. I'd say there are so many more ways of looking at the backside than a front side of the move. So, but I would say maybe those three categories are the main categories.
I've heard you describe your trading style as a combination of systematic and discretionary. Can you talk a little bit about what that percentage maybe breakdown looks like? When are you more discretionary and more systematic? How do you think about all of that when a potential trade shows up?
Like if I go a year back, and I was just reaching consistent profitability, I was purely a system trader. So when I got the trigger, I entered, I put my stop in place, and most often the cover criteria was end of day. So that's it, and don't interfere with it. And I even had a few months where I gave myself a daily score. Did I actually follow that exactly? And kind of rated my performance based on that rather than the P&L. The P&L is then the result of having good enough setups and executing those. And I think that's probably for most, it's kind of for me, I would say it's the easiest way of reaching profitability, because if you have proven setups that have worked over a long period of time, then most likely they will continue to perform, at least to stay profitable. And then it's only about the execution. But over time, I also started to get more and more screen time, see the charts, understand the price action. So then I started to also, I would say more this year, I started to take also discretionary trades, and then sometimes add discretion to system trades. But I would say I'm still trading system trades, almost purely systematic, but then I'm taking discretionary trades on top of that. And then I always journal all my trades manually, and I want to make sure and follow it on a monthly level that am I profitable also on the discretionary trades? Because a year ago I wasn't. So if I'm not making money on discretionary trades in a consistent way, then there is no point of taking those. But I've proven to myself over this year that I can make money also on the discretionary side, so I can add to my P&L a bit by taking those. But I would say I kind of keep those separated, and then every month I also post my monthly stats to X, and I'm dividing the discretionary trades and the system trades. And I've had now, for example, some months where it's pretty much 50-50 P&L split between those.
For your systems trading, if there's a drawdown, how do you sort of overcome that feeling of, maybe FOMO to change it? In other words, how do you stick to your system during the drawdown periods? Do you have enough confidence in the back testing and you just let the system perform as it's going to perform? How do you deal with some of the human elements of systems trading?
Something that really helped me was that early in my journey was that I kind of built a complete playbook out of my setups. So I can share a bit how does that look like. So this is kind of a dummy version of it, but basically the functionality is there. So in this kind of an Excel, I have all of my setups in these different tabs, and I have this kind of total strategy performance that I built on top of it. So basically I can here modify if I want to use different kind of stop levels for different setups, what kind of position sizes I would be looking there, and which of the setups I want to include in the kind of total playbook backtesting. And what I would be interested in always looking if I'm having any kind of doubts or in a drawdown is the long-term stats. So basically I can check from here that this complete playbook, how has it looked like in history? So what has been the profitability of the different years, months, weeks, and days in the history, and how many trades have there been in history. So I can really take a look and understand that, hey, for example, it's normal to have a red month every now and then. Basically 90% of the months should be green. I can also take a look at that on a weekly level. So basically 76% of weeks should be green, and on average the green week should be over twice the size of a red week. So that's a nice stat to have. So 46% win rate, and then kind of weekly risk to reward ratio at 2.29. And I can see all the weeks in the history. And yeah, there are some periods where you might have several weeks losing streak, but basically that would be also something that would be normal what has been happening in history as well. So this is something that really gives me the confidence that if I just follow my system, I should be consistently profitable over the long run.
That's incredible, and that's something that a discretionary trader doesn't necessarily have with that level of accuracy. I mean, it's possible to make something like that, but I really think it's incredible that you've been able to create a system like this that shows you and can use sort of this, statistics and probabilities to sort of help you, psychologically feel more comfortable that your system is on track. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming this is very helpful in the moments where you need it most. Maybe you're coming off of back-to-back red weeks, and you're able to look at your stats and confirm that this is, sort of as expected within the system.
Yeah, exactly. And also if I find myself deviating too much from the system, also in a way that where actually my discretionary decisions are maybe not being profitable, or the system is beating me, it's basically good to look that actually I don't need to do anything on top of the system to really make it in this game. So everything on top of this is extra, but just by following the system, I know that I will be profitable in the long run. And rightly you said, it's completely different than what you have as a discretionary trader, because you don't actually have that full history of those trades. So you are not able to kind of maybe understand what are normal drawdown periods and how often those would be coming.
For someone who's interested in putting together something similar, how long did this take you to put together? Was this something you worked on all on your own? What inspired it? And do you have any tips for someone who's interested in putting something similar together?
The longest time, of course, takes the actual setup development. But when I had those nailed, and basically putting together this kind of overview, it was maybe 1 or 2 days of work for me. But I did have some Excel background, so it was kind of easy for me from that perspective. But yeah, I really wanted to also keep it quite simple, so it's not too big of a work, but it's I think a really important one, that you are not only looking at your setups individually, but also as a playbook. And many or some system traders or statistical people would be asking maybe that kind of, for example, what's the correlation between my setups? I don't have the actual numbers of what's the correlation, but I look it in this way, that I have the full playbook, and if the setups would be highly correlated, I should be seeing more, let's say, big red months, so multiple setups going into a drawdown at the exact same time. But basically when I'm seeing that they quite well compensate each other, that when one setup is in a drawdown, another one is green, I can see that they basically in history they have not correlated too much, so adding to the kind of conviction and confidence side.
Your particular setups, are they both long and short? Is that part of the reason that they don't necessarily correlate? Maybe they offset one another, or do you prefer one potential, do you prefer being more long than you are short, or is it just 50-50, something like that?
I don't have a preference, but I have not been able to develop a consistently profitable long setup. So basically all the setups are short. So I would be happy to add long setups to my repertoire, but haven't been able to do so in a systematic way.
How do you avoid sort of overfitting, a particular strategy or setup to a particular time period that you've back tested? How do you deal with sort of that element of a system and putting something together?
And I think that's a topic where there are a lot of different ways that you could go about it, and really sophisticated ways as well. I'm keeping it quite simple there. So basically, I'm backtesting my setups with data starting from the beginning of 2019. After that, we've had the COVID market, the bear market following it, and now different environments last year and this year. So if I see consistent profitability over that time period, I'm quite confident that there will be profitability also for the setup in the future as well. But then for the overfitting itself, it's really about limiting the number of criteria. So the best would be to be able to keep it at as low as possible. So on some of my best setups, I might have only like 4 criteria, and that's it. And I know some system traders might end up with optimizing a setup and then they have 10 different criteria there. I would be really scared of trading anything like that. Sounds really overfitted. So as low number of criteria as possible, and then I want to see that it has been profitable every year since that start of 2019. And that's including the 5% handicap that I'm adding to the trades.
I've talked to a few people on the subject of backtesting, and they've all mentioned the importance of out of sample data. So, how do you think about this out of sample data when you're testing your potential, new strategy? Are you using a lot of, historical data to test it, or are there certain periods that you avoid? How does that all work for you when you're looking to backtest a system?
Yeah, I've kept my backtesting really simple. So I'm not actually doing out of sample testing. And I know some system traders and quants are pulling their hairs right now hearing this. But I think there are other ways as well to try to avoid overfitting. But yeah, out of sample testing is one of those ways that you can be more certain that you haven't overfitted a setup. So it's valuable, but I don't do it.
There's sort of something useful about just continuing to stick with what works, right? And so I wanted to make that point and let you speak on that in terms of whether you think it's something that over time you'll want to do with out of sample testing, or if you're embracing the sort of the simplicity.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a good reference to what I used to do before trading. So in my previous working life, I was focused on optimizing processes with data and statistical approaches, this kind of a Six Sigma methodology. And I think there as well, it was really important to not get distracted by the statistical rules and laws, and take a practical approach and think that what is actually required to make a good decision. And it's not necessarily something that's exactly taught in a statistical book, but it's kind of common sense, what is required. And for me in backtesting, I think what I'm doing, I've seen it work, and no reason for me to start to change that.
I think that's a good point because it's easy to get caught up on sort of hearing about what works sort in theory versus what might actually work in practice. And related to that, I wanted to talk about, something that we hear oftentimes, which is the importance of maybe risk reward for a particular setup or system, and something like win rate, win percentage. Maybe people are desiring something that's 100% win percentage or 80%, and you need to build a system that's based on that. Versus, some people I've seen have a win percentage in the under 50%, but they're very profitable. So how do you think about those two concepts and how they fit into a system? Win rate, risk reward.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting topic, and I think every now and then comes up. And I remember when I started trading, I remember hearing so many times that you need to have a risk to reward ratio that's well above 1. So like you want to have your winners be 2 or 3 times bigger than your losers. In which case, basically, it would be enough for you to have a less than a 50% win rate even. I don't think that it's not really that black and white. So you can be profitable with a 10% win rate, and you can be profitable with a 90% win rate. But they come with a trade-off, and usually it's between the risk to reward ratio and win rate. So if we take Christian Gulamäki as a successful swing trader, his win percentage tends to be maybe between 20 and 30%, but he has huge winners every now and then basically his risk reward ratio is really high. Then there are some traders that I also follow that might have a 90 or 95% win rate, and maybe they are not even profitable in the long term, or are having challenges with drawdowns. I think it's always about finding a balance there. So you need to look at kind of what's the expectancy of how much do you expect to make per trade, and also think it from kind of P&L growth perspective. So usually if you look at how the P&L curve of different kinds of win rate and risk reward ratio go, is that if you have a high win rate but really low RR, you usually have a P&L curve that goes slowly up, and then you have a big loss, and slowly up and big loss. Whereas if you have a kind of Christian Gulamäki style of trading where you have a low win rate and high RR, usually it's kind of a slow bleed and then big winner, and slow bleed and a big winner. So they are very different styles, and I think in the end the most important thing is that it fits to your kind of mental side and personality. Like some people don't really like to trade with a low win rate because it feels like they are failing and losing all the time. Whereas in the end, it's really about ensuring that you can be consistently profitable. And for me, for my setups, usually those tend to be with the higher win rate. So win rate between 70 and 90%, usually 70 to 80%. And the RR is below 1, so it's maybe 0.7 or 0.8, which then again, some people would be saying that you can't be profitable with a win rate, risk reward ratio less than 1, but fully doable if you have a high enough win rate.
What have you found is useful in terms of the speed of doing a back test and the overall accuracy of a back test, so that when you do actually put your plan and your strategy into practice, when you are having sort of a drawdown period, if that's the type of strategy that you have, you can feel accurate that those big wins are going to come?
Yeah, I think like if I have a new idea of a setup, I usually do kind of a rough back testing with speed, so prioritizing speed over quality and accuracy, because I want to see that is there any merit to that idea. Usually it means that I might download a much smaller number of data points and do kind of a basic backtesting that way. And then if I see that there is kind of underlying profitability available there, then I start to add there, and then I might have a Excel where I have like 200 or 300 columns of data, but I start with maybe 20 in the first phase.
And so for those listening who are thinking about getting into the world of, systems trading and back testing, is there maybe like a 3-step plan that you would give for them to get started into that world that has helped you become a successfully profitable trader?
One thing that it will for sure require is that you actually start to do that yourself, like go into the deep end and start to try to develop those setups. And you can start with really simple data. It can be related to just a daily level price data of stocks. I think I remember there was one post in X from the Short Bear where he mentioned that if you can't find an edge simply using a daily open, high, low, close data, then you probably won't be making it in this game. So you need to be able to do it first on the just simple and high level stuff, and then you can start to think, making it more complex. Maybe you are starting to use some exponential moving averages or whatever could you come up with different kind of indicators. But yeah, to get started in that, you need to get data somehow. There are some services available for that, and some platforms give you pretty much readily developed backtesting functionalities. So you could also start by doing it like that. But in the end, I would at least recommend on going more towards being able to really do the backtesting completely yourself with data, whether it's Excel or it could be also that you're coding with Python or something else. But I think when you go to that deep end, you are then going through the actual data, and in a way you will trust the backtesting and the data much more when you have gone through it and you have really worked your way on understanding the setups and the data.
Would you say that coding skills are required for doing backtesting, or are they just nice to have?
I don't have coding skills, and I'm profitable, so it's not mandatory, but it would for sure help. I know system traders who are really good at coding, and yeah, they can do fancy stuff much faster than I can. So for sure it helps.
I wanted to also ask about performance review. Are you journaling or taking sort of notes at the end of every trading day and then reviewing it? What does that optimization process look like for you?
So I basically journal all of my trades manually. I do that at the end of the day, and for each trade I want to then label that. If it was a system setup, what system setup was it? And if it was a discretionary trade, then what type of a trade it was. That's more vague because you can have so many nuances, and I don't necessarily have the discretionary trades so well defined, but basically I do that every day. And then the actual analysis I do on a monthly level. So and that's something that I also post to some level of detail to X every month. So I'm looking at the win percentage, I'm having the risk to reward ratio and so forth. Personally, I'm also doing it on a setup level to make sure that the setups I'm trading, that they are performing well. And I then every month I also compare that when I update my databases for the setups, that what does the data say? Should I have been green on this setup? And then was I actually green on the setup? So I want to make sure that my performance is matching or exceeding the kind of backtest performance on every month.
When you review, are you placing equal weight to your winning trades as your losing trades, or do you tend to focus on one more than the other?
I don't really go into trade level in a way because so most of my trades are system trades. So it's not so much about kind of how did the chart look like, how did I execute it. It's more about I have this certain setup. I've taken maybe 15 trades on it during the month. What was the win percentage, risk reward ratio? If I have some outside losses, I will take a look at kind of what was the reasoning behind that. Did I for some reason put too heavy size there, or was there some extra slippage that I didn't expect, or what was the reason?
How many trades are you triggering any given, say, day or month? Is it a very active system, or is it more of a hands-off system until certain parameters are met?
I've been averaging at around 100 trades per month for quite some time. Does vary a bit, but I think that's quite close to it. And out of those, maybe 60 or 70 are system trades, and the rest discretionary trades.
What percentage of your system is automated, and doing executions for you versus maybe letting you know when a trade is ready and you manually take the trade, or whether to get in or out of the position? What percentage is automated?
None is fully automated, so I'm basically manually executing, and that goes back to kind of, I would say, programming skills. So I could consider algorithmic trading if I could code it myself. I don't really trust others to do it for myself. So currently executing manually. So basically I have trade ideas that I'm using as a scanner. I have my setups configured there. I have alerts coming from there. And basically how I try to spend my trading days is I try to be as much away from the screens as possible. So basically I'm just having a earbud so I can hear the alerts coming, and I might go to our gym or golf simulator and or spend time with the kids. And when I hear that an alert is coming, then I rush to the screens, take the trade, put the stop in place, and later in the day come and close the trade. So I try to be as hands-off as possible. Execution is manual, but at the same time, every now and then I end up staring at the trades and managing it somehow at the screens, but basically trying to do it with minimized screen time, and the execution is manual.
Can you talk a little bit about what your daily routine looks like and what trading looks like for you?
Yeah, and I think that's impacted also by the time zone. So I live in Finland, so basically I'm 7 hours ahead of market time. So pre-market starts 11 a.m. my time, so around lunchtime, and then the regular trading hours 4:30, and then the regular trading hours close at 11 p.m. So I tend to take trades from the start of pre-market until the end of regular trading hours. Due to the time zone, I'm not touching after hours. That would be at the middle of the night, and with the family life, not possible to really trade during that time. And the routine, I know that many discretionary traders might be doing a lot of, or they might have quite a heavy routine on doing scans or research or stuff like that. For me, it's mainly I come to my trading desk, fire up the laptop, start trade ideas and other trading softwares, and then when the pre-market or markets open, I then start to get alerts on what's valid. So I don't really do that much of any kind of research or screening or scanning, just wait for the triggers to come.
That sounds actually kind of nice to have your triggers let you know when a trade is happening rather than being glued to the screen, especially with those hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeppez, I wanted to also ask you about risk management. So how do you think about position sizing for any one of your trades that you in your setups?
For my system setups, it's quite clearly defined. So I'm first of all I'm rating kind of my setups versus the other setups using Kelly criteria. So some might know that. So it's basically a kind of mathematical model for optimal bet sizing in gambling or betting. In trading, you have much more uncertainties. So basically, going with the full Kelly would probably you would blow up quite quickly. So I'm using a fractional Kelly, and I'm not specifically using a certain Kelly, like let's say 20% Kelly for all of my trades, but I'd rather use the kind of Kelly position sizing to rate my setups versus each other. So how much bigger position size should I put on a certain setup versus another one? And then kind of where I end up with the position size, I then reflect on kind of what I'm willing to take on a max loss if one comes. My stats are such that max losses come with kind of maybe a 10% probability, so they are quite rare. But I want to make sure that those are not too big. When I had a smaller account, I was more aggressive on my position sizing, because kind of if I would have taken a major drawdown or blown the account, I potentially could have refunded that. Now that I'm trading with a bigger account, the position sizes are a bit less in percentage terms to the account, but I still continue to grow kind of the dollar value of those position sizes, because I'm after a really high growth rate. So basically I'm aiming to have at the very minimum at least 1,000% growth per year. In the last 16 months or so, I think I'm now at like 14,000%, going from that 12K account to a mil in net profits. But it doesn't come without kind of high volatility in the account. So I have had my fair share of major drawdowns.
Is there one particular drawdown that you believe, having a system helped you with your risk management, and how did you get out of that, drawdown?
Yeah, there's one memorable loss from October 23. We had one gapper that became quite the black swan. The ticker was TPST, and it was a valid gapper for me, so I shot it from the open. And as I usually do as a system trader, I don't necessarily watch the trade through the day, but I just put a stop in place and then come close the trade at the end of day. But that time I forgot to put the stop in place. So basically coming back to the screens, I was down 40% on my account on that one trade. Immediately I got out of that. And then basically next day I continued as usual, with the exception that I double checked that I have my stops in place for sure. But even with that, like I lost in that one trade 40% of my account, but I still finished that month green. So that was kind of the power of the system setups I had.
During that loss, what do you do in a moment like that? Do you stop trading for the day, go take a walk? How do you mentally recover from that? Or do you have so much confidence in your system that you just write it off completely? Because 40% is a significant amount. So I'm just, fascinated by how you're able to come back the next day.
Yeah, next day it was already fine. Yeah, it doesn't feel good in the moment. So yeah, I went for a walk after that, but I think I'm not as mentally attached to money as many others might be. So I would say I'm less impacted by the high swings in my account and P&L than many others would be. But for sure, I'm not immune to those. So did not feel great.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I never mean to have to bring up stories of loss, But sort of on the topic of risk management as well, do you use ideally a fixed percentage amount per trade, or do you use a more dynamic approach to, how much loss you're willing to take per trade or per setup?
I mainly have a fixed percentage stop defined for the setups. I also have for some setups some more dynamic approaches, but those are a bit more rare. So it's mainly a fixed percentage.
And do you have a max daily, weekly, or monthly loss?
On a daily level, I have, and basically, then because I'm sizing in a certain percentage of my account for the setups, if I have that big loss, then the next day my account will be smaller, and therefore my position size will be less in dollar terms. So that kind of takes care of itself. Of course, if I have a losing streak, I will also want to make sure that it doesn't continue or go into too big of a drawdown. So I might intervene as well, but I don't have anything else than the max daily loss defined.
If it's okay, I'd love to go through sort of a lightning round set of questions. Pretty quick questions, pretty quick answers. Is that okay?
Works for me.
So my first question is, what would you consider to be your greatest strength as a trader?
I'm not mentally attached to money.
What's the best trading resource that you've ever found that has helped you the most?
For me, it was system trading by Chris Verma.
What would you tell the traders who are struggling trading and thinking about quitting?
You need to have a proven edge to make money in the markets. So you need to somehow ensure that do you actually have an edge.
Are there any common misperceptions that you believe exist about trading that people believe?
I hear too many times that it's all about the mental side. Mental side doesn't matter if you don't have an edge.
What has been your most memorable trading moment so far?
Being able to go full-time trading, so quitting my 9 to 5.
Is there anything that you do away from the trading desk that you believe helps you as a trader?
Golf, and I'm quite curious about that, but I think, helps me in many ways.
For those listening who would like to learn more about you, how you trade, or maybe even contact you, how can they do so?
Best way is to follow me on X, where you can find me with the handle Jeppez 420, and make sure it's the right one. There are many fake accounts as well there.
Jeppez, thank you so much for being here and sharing your trading journey with the audience. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Trader's Journey. We have additional episodes we believe you might also like, so don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified of upcoming episodes the moment they're published. Thanks for tuning in.